Can you hear me? Okay, good. It's been suggested I say something about vows. Not the content, I'm not qualified to do that. But I think something a little bit about the benefits, why we want to take them, and commitments. We have vows, which is a decision to not do something, and a commitment, which is a decision to do something. As the Lamas would tell us when they talk about enthusiastic perseverance and the 6 perfections, when we're really convinced about the benefits of something, then you will only want to do it, you know. So I think part of our problem with vows, I just want to dig a little bit deep into our assumptions. I think we come from a very dualistic view of punishment and reward. You know, I was a good Catholic, and morality by definition is doing what God said, and if you don't, you get punished. But I mean, that's also our view, I think, in the ordinary world. You know, we have this very strong view about punishment and reward. So we feel like someone's squashing instructions upon us, sort of restraining us from doing nice things. So it's rather a childish view. So let's look at the assumptions, unpack our assumptions. But I think first, maybe we should look at what's the point of it, what's this job we're trying to do? And I think it's conveyed so perfectly in the word Buddha, Sangye, the Tibetan. The etymology is very tasty. Sang implies the utter eradication from our mind of all neuroses, all delusions, all the misconceptions, all the nonsense. And then Gye implies the development to perfection of all the other stuff, the good stuff, wisdom, clarity. These are at the core of our being. I mean, that's a really simple concept. So if that's the end result, that tells us the job, doesn't it? The job is to rid the mind of all the rubbish and grow all the goodness. That's Buddha. So why is it so hard? Well, according to Buddha, as we know, our mind is beginningless, and so our minds are imbued with all the beginningless delusions, all the neuroses, all the nonsense. They completely permeate our minds, you know. So it's not so easy to do it. So we also have body and speech, and that's our problem. As Lama Yeshe says, you know, the 5 senses have a bad reputation. So our first job, and this is in the Lam Rim, isn't it? Our first job is to subdue our body and speech. Well, why should we? Because they're driven by the delusions and they just make a mess. So to understand this, we have to understand the simple principle of karma. Buddha's Buddha's view of the universe, a natural law, you know. He didn't make it up. No one's running it. It's not punishment, it's not reward. There's no punisher, there's no rewarder in Buddhism. We do it to ourselves, you know. As His Holiness says, karma's like self-creation. We're the boss. But we're so demented we don't think we are, you know, so we have to realise that. So karma's the law that runs the universe. Karma's the law in which everybody's lives are determined by. So we've got to work first on the body and speech. They're the servants of our mind. We've got to subdue them. Okay, so a vow then, if it's a decision to refrain from something, you know, and then we hear it in the typical way. We get all distressed and kind of guilty and neurotic. I mean, it's kind of absurd, you know. If you analyse, it's just learning to mould your behaviour in a certain way, so that the job you really want to do, as Lama Yeshe puts it, which is when you really become a Buddhist, work on your mind, lessen the delusions, and grow the goodness. Then we should be so delighted to want to do that. You know, and that's what's stressed in the very beginning. Entry-level junior school, grade 1 in Buddhism is abide by the laws of karma. Buddha suggests we back off and don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. Well, I mean, so does Jesus. So does your grandma. But what's Buddha's reason? The crucial difference is Buddha's reason. Jesus' reason for telling us not to kill is because God said, and I'm not criticising, but that's crucial to understand. My Jesuit priest friend, when I asked him what by definition is a sin, he said by definition a sin is doing what God said not to do. And that's reasonable if there is a boss who runs the universe and who made us and made the laws. Well, Buddha doesn't have a view like that. He argues with that. He says, you know, we don't need creating. We do fine creating ourselves. So Buddha says don't kill. Why? Well, first he defines a negative action as one that harms another. The major level is first level. So he exhorts us to refrain at least from doing the heavy-duty negative actions with our body and speech that harm others. But why? His reason why is different. At the beginning, it's not because it's an action that harms another. At the beginning, and this is the fundamental point about all of the Buddha's path, is because it has an impact upon us, because we create ourselves. So he exhorts us not to kill because he says, if you kill Robina, you sow seeds in your mind that won't go away because everything you think and do and say leaves seeds in your mind. It's just a natural law, and they're going to ripen at some point unless you do something about it. And so an action that's a negative one, which is an action of killing, impelled by a neurotic state of mind, aversion or attachment or whatever, will necessarily program your mind, sow seeds in your mind that will ripen in the future as you're suffering. So who wants suffering? We do not. So then, okay, a vow, the benefit of a vow then is it's for our sake. We're the beneficiaries. But let's look at it, even unpack a little bit more what this vow, the word vow. But if you're driving a car, in the beginning there's 10 little instructions. 7 of them are about the body and speech. It's like nothing. 7, Buddha would exhort us to refrain from 7 little baby actions. But if you learn to drive a car, if you labelled it that way, you probably have to memorise 100 things not to do. But you don't call them vows. You vow, I promise, not to put the foot on the accelerator simultaneously with the brakes. You'll be in serious trouble if you do. You vow not to do so many things, and you commit to do many things. You commit to do this and that, but we don't call them vows and commitments. And we want to learn them, because if we didn't know the vows and commitments of driving a car, we'll be in serious trouble. So it's like that. Everything we do is like that. When you play the piano, look at the intricacy and the precision. What? What? Oh, I'm sorry. I forget. Shall I stop for 5 minutes? I'm sorry. I have no control over my behaviour. Lama Yeshe said one time, when I was weeping with self-pity, he said, "There's nothing wrong with your heart, dear. It's just your behaviour." I was very relieved. Okay. I'll try and remember to go slowly. All right. So when you play the piano, if you have to play Bach, look at the unbelievable intricacy and precision in the rules for how to use your hands. You don't complain when your teacher tells you to do exactly this, put your fingers this way. You know if you don't do that, you won't be able to play Bach. But we don't think of it as a vow and a commitment. So really, this is all we're doing here. So what are we trying to become here? A Sangye. We're trying to mould our body and speech. I think I read Alex Berzin says, I don't know what the source is in the teachings, that a vow is like a subtle physical form, that's visible to clairvoyance. So we're trying to shape our body, using our body and speech to help us do this final job of becoming a Sangye, So the benefit is, we're the beneficiaries, so it's stupendous. We should be so happy. So the other point about a vow, Lama Zopa said one time, you could have a person who's practicing lots of practices day and night, but not having merely even a vow not to kill. Then you could have another person who's merely keeping a vow not to kill. The second person, he says, creates infinite more virtuous karma, meaning is sowing infinitely more virtuous karmic seeds, ticking away every second in their mind stream. And second, purifying their mind, putting atomic bombs under the delusions and the tendencies, the karmic habits to kill. So, and this is the point about the vow, this is the one key thing, and one needs to think about this. This is the real reason to have vows. As Lama Zopa says, being good is not enough. So what he means, I think, is we've got some virtue. We're in this room because we've got virtue. We can access our virtue. What a miracle. But we've also got access to all the other delusions, which are basically the animal tendencies to eat, sleep, go to the toilet, have sex and the rest. And they dominate our minds, those tendencies. So, then I got nervous and lost the track. Sorry. What was I saying? What did I just say? What? Oh, that one, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So the point of the vow is, being good is not enough, meaning our virtue is not strong enough. I think if we had emptiness and bodhicitta, we'd be okay, because 24 hours a day, even our breath, because it's impelled by those two states of mind, then our actions would be virtuous. And then we understand, when we understand, which we must understand when it comes to karma, that the main factor that usually the main factor that determines the character of the thing we do with our speech, mind, body and speech, the main factor that determines the character of it, which means the main factor that determines whether the action is negative or positive, forget the neutral, is not the action itself, but is what the lamas would call the motivation. What we'd say is the purpose, the reason. That's what gives meaning, actual literal meaning to every action we do. So if our virtue is very weak and our delusions which pervade our mind are quite strong, then naturally most of our actions won't sow very deep virtuous seeds. It's reasonable. But the other major point about the vows is if, as the Buddha says, these vows, and as Lama Zopa is implying, when you've got your vows and keep them purely, then they pervade your mind 24 hours a day. So every second of the day, when you're asleep, when you're in the pub drinking your beer, assuming you haven't got a vow not to drink, when you're having the best fun in the planet, 24 hours a day, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds and putting atomic bonds under your delusion. So being good is not enough. So when we get this, we should be crying with sadness not to live in vows, rather than thinking of them as somebody telling us what not to do. I mean, that's ridiculous. We should want to know the vows and be so happy to live in them, And that's so then what are the vows? And we've got the first level, as Geshe-la told us yesterday, the three principal aspects of the path, which replicates the three stages of the Lam Rim. Junior, as His Holiness says, it's like the education system. So the first level, entry level, junior school, the lowest scope, and the next scope, which is like the wisdom wing. That's the vows of the individual liberation, pratimoksha, the vows of monks and nuns, and the vows of lay people. The first level. And the main purpose of those is to help us refrain from harming others, because we don't want to suffer in the future, because everything we think and do and say leaves seeds in our mind. And so it's mainly to protect us. They're like, there's no wiggle room. You just don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, etc. There are 5 of them, 4 from those 10 and then 1 extra, no intoxicants. So then 24 hours a day of living in those vows and that's the point. The motivation is the crucial one, but if you've got vows, it seems to me they overpower that. They're even because of the potency of vows, even when you're not intending to not kill. And that's the point. Right now in this room, we're probably not thinking, I will not kill, which is the very meaning of intention. And intention is the real essential meaning of the word karma, mental action, intention. As Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish, the thought, I will, volition, intention. So when there's no intention, we don't have an intention now to not kill anybody, unless you're sitting next to your boyfriend and refraining from killing him because you're so angry. We're not intending to not kill anyone. So if we don't have a vow not to kill, we are not creating any virtue of non-killing. And as Lama Zopa will tell us, or that the teachings will tell us, just to get another decent human body at the time of after death, we need bucket loads of nice, delicious, rich, intentional, non-killing karmic seeds in our bank vault. But if we don't create much non-killing, then we're not going to create much virtue. It's just being good is not enough. So if you have a vow not to kill, then 24 hours a day you're sowing seeds of non-killing. I mean, it's like we'd be sad not to do this if we understood, and that karma's about ourselves, first and foremost. So then we have the bodhisattva vows, and they're more amazing, more expansive, more extraordinary, The first lot are for our benefit. We're the main beneficiary. But of course, others will benefit as a result indirectly. As Lama Zopa says, all the rats and roaches will have a party because we leave them in peace. But the next level, the bodhisattva, this is to enable us to help others. Not just to be nice and cute to them, but to have enough wisdom to know, to do and say whatever's best for that person. And so because the bodhisattva vows are more extensive and expansive than the lay the pratimoksha, then there is a vow as a bodhisattva vow to break an earlier vow if it's for the sake of others. So here motivation's the key. So Alex Burrs, in the text that Tom has given us, in this 3 root, is Tom here? There you go. The 3 sets of vows. These are listed, you know, the Bodhisattva vows. And there's a commentary in there from Alex Burrs, which is very, very clear. He gives exactly each one the motivation that would be the one that would determine that you'd break the vow. And they're also, the secondary vows there are all divided up in relation to help us perfect the 6 perfections. They're broken up, they're divided into groups, you know. So for example, to help us enhance our generosity, there's a vow that if you, let's say, ring me up and say, come for dinner, Robina, but I can't be bothered, then I break a bodhisattva vow that prevents my generosity because I stopped you from creating generosity because my motivation was, you know, just my own laziness. So they're more powerful. And there's 18 root and 46 secondary, or 46 or something. So again, like the road rules, if you don't know them, how do you know you've broken them? If you don't know the bodhisattva vows, how do you know if you've broken them? And how do you know how to grow your mind, to shape your behaviour so you can be of benefit to others? And then you have the tantric vows, the most extensive. As Lama Yeshe says, tantra's technical. So the other thing, just saying briefly, so the point I want to make, I'm always on about, I get a bit neurotic about this one. A few years ago in one of the centres, people had taken initiation from His Holiness, Kala Chakra, and they asked me to help them go through learning what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do. Well, it's never in one place, and with respect to Tom, it is also not everything is in here, Tom. He knows. I'm glad he's confessing. Okay. But I mean, it's not listed, so I had to scurry around and get all the information, and I was shocked, because I didn't kind of mentally note. And again, respect for Francois, on the website, the only thing about commitments is the number of mantras we're supposed to do. There's nothing about all the other things. So I want to list to you, don't make you nervous, but I want to read out. Just the list, that's all I want to do. The list of the various things we are committing to do and vowing not to do. Again, probably all of these are only a fraction of what you commit to do and vow not to do when you drive a car. Please remember that. Don't get nervous, you know. So I counted about 18 things, 18 categories of things, not 18, more than that, but 18 categories of things. So I'll just list them. And then I'm sure during the retreat, Venerable Chantal is going to organise teachings on all these so you know what you're doing, you know. No, I can't find it. It went away out of my reading now. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, okay, first, refuge, because if you're taking tantric vows, then that assumes you've got bodhisattva vows. And if you've taken bodhisattva vows, that assumes you've got patimoksha vows, because they're dependent upon each other. So then if we've taken refuge, then we've got various commitments. 6 or 7 things. We should know them. They're in that text that Tom has given us. Then if we've got the pratimoksha vows, then we should know what they are, and then we should know what are the conditions for breaking them, and so we can purify them. Then you've got your bodhisattva vows, 18 root and 46 secondary, as I said. And then you've got your tantric vows and commitments. So as Lama Zopa often says, you know, keeping our samaya, not just doing your mantras, not just doing the sadhana, but many things we committed to do during the initiation. And they're not often stated very clearly, and I know when I had to give that talk, I had to really learn what it meant. I hadn't thought about the 19 commitments to the 5 Buddha families, you know. I hadn't thought about that, even though I've committed to it. So we've got to know and keep the 19 commitments of the 5 Buddha families. They're listed in the FPMT booklet. And I've got I'll just read. Okay. Then you've got the 14 common root tantric vows, which is in that booklet. And then you've got, depending on the configuration, I think in different texts there's different ways of configuring. There are what we call the secondary vows. Alex Burrs calls them something different. But there's 8 of those, and there's a group of 3, I think a group of 8 and then 3, depends. But then also, you know, Tom, there's a group missing from this booklet as well. Did you know that? The secondary vows. The tantric secondary vows. And then the 10 mother tantric vows are missing too. Okay, good. But you didn't get it in time for this big fat course. Oh, Tom, he's trying. Thank you, Tom. Tip of the wish. Okay, so then we've committed to, so the refuge, pratimoksha vows, bodhisattva vows, tantric vows. Then there's different groups of those. Then to recite once in the morning, I'm not sure if this is a commitment, but it's really sensible to do it. That, the prayer that you take. Oh, sorry. Yes. One of them is, I think it's really good to do, the prayer that we take when we take the bodhisattva vows that we repeated with Rinpoche, and then the tantric one of the five, which is really reiterating the commitments to the 5 Buddha families. That's the little prayer we do to redo, to purify and retake our tantric vows. That's the prayer. But those 2 prayers, I'm not sure it's a commitment, but to take them every day just makes sense because they include refuge, bodhisattva, they include everything, But then the commitment is to recite once in the morning and once at night. And I've heard His Holiness say twice a day. Sometimes it was only once, but I've heard His Holiness say twice, once in the morning and once at night. The root bodhisattva vows, the root tantric vows, to recite them, and the secondary tantric vows and commitments, and the vows and commitments related to Mother Tantra, just to recite them. So they're incorporated into the 6-session Guru Yoga practice, which is what we're also committed to do 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night, which Venerable Chantal is going to have it explained to you all. If you've also taken Mother Tantra, you need to recite once a day the 8-limb praise, which will be explained to you. It's in the 6-session Guru Yoga as well. If you've also taken Mother Tantra, and this is Mother Tantra, as Rinpoche is saying, we need to offer tsog twice a month, on the 10th and 25th of the Tibetan calendar. In a group of little commentary that you can get from FPMT of Lama Zopa about tsog. And tsog, it seems, is a group of men and women together. It's a group thing. So if you can't do group, that's why the centres, the bare minimum, all the centres should offer, was doing Rinpoche's wishes, is at least offer on your calendar the tsog on those days. If no one comes, who cares? At least you're offering it, and then you do it yourselves. But many of the centres don't offer that. And then I often think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He doesn't have any Dharma centres. So people all over the world are taking Kala Chakra. And if it's not us Gelugpa centres who provide them with the means to know their commitments and come and do tsog, who else is it? We have to remember that, It's our job. All these people around the world, millions, thousands have taken vows. They wouldn't know. So we need to provide this service, it seems to me. And then it must be a commitment to purify every day, but maybe it's not. But as Lama Zopa says, we are insane not to do the 4 opponent powers every day, not to purify. That's back in junior school. The first level, entry level junior school, grade 1, as Lama Zopa puts it, is back off and don't harm sentient beings. Next level of practice, immediate, is to take care, purify, put atomic bombs under the karmic seeds we've already planted in countless lifetimes to prevent them from ripening as our suffering, for our sake. And this is the point about the first of the 4 opponent powers. It's called regret. We have to regret, and this is what renunciation is. We've got to regret the things we've done in the past because we've sown seeds in our mind that will ripen as our suffering. And who wants more suffering? We are exhausted from suffering. That's like compassion for ourselves. We could say it like that. That's the meaning of regret, the first one. Compassion comes next. And as Geshe-la said yesterday, if you don't have an understanding of renunciation, which means karma, which means what are the causes of suffering, how can you have compassion? You can't, So it's got to be ourselves first, and that's the regret, the first step of the 4 opponent powers, to purify. First, to stop sowing more negative seeds, live in vows, quick, easy way to do, then you can put your feet up and eat popcorn and watch telly all day, creating virtue, and then at the end of the day, before you go to sleep, purify. Then you'll guaranteed get another decent human body, no effort. Karma takes care, as Lama Yeshe says, So the next one is for us to carry. I think, Tom, the only commitment is not all those instruments, it's just the Dorji and bell. Because the 19 commitments to the 5 Buddha families, luckily, 17 of them are kept by doing 6-session Guru Yoga. What a relief. And the last 2 are to hold a Dorji and bell, wisdom and method. And that's in that little picture. I remember one young Gelugpa Lama in a video online said if we really carried around all the instruments and the bones, this and that, we'd have to have a pickup truck, So luckily a picture will do. It'll qualify. But the commitment is the Dorji and bell. And I don't know if it's a commitment, but we need to have don't we need to have inner offering? Is that a commitment? Yes. Geshe Graham, is that a commitment? Geshe Graham, do you know? I'm a beginner. Oh, no. Anybody know? Yes. Yes. Okay, so it's in here. But this is my document. This is not yours. It's not listed. I've got them listed as 18 things. I did offer my advice to Tom, but he never took it. So if you are not, so it's 18 things. It's helpful to have a list with numbers, I feel. Those things are what you're going to be committing to, and then you've got all the instructions in each one of those, what to do. So we should be so excited. If we want to mould our body, speech and mind into the mind of a Buddha, rid of the delusions and grow the goodness, then we would want to do this with such a happy mind. We are the beneficiaries. So, of course, then we can have the bodhicitta business, you know. But don't be apologetic about being happy to do it for yourself. I mean, we're so pathetic like that. Think it's a bad motivation. You can't, you've got to have that one. Be excited to want to keep vows for yourself. Of course you do. The only reason I'm a nun, wearing 14th century robes, I really appreciate vows, you know. It's just a cheap and easy way to practice. I mean, we should be so happy. It's like getting 1,000% return on your investment. I'm not joking. Well, that's all I have to say. The details and the contents you can get from the experts, okay? You want to ask me a question, I suppose. I don't know. It's 11:30. So if there is a question, otherwise we can stop, unless you have a question. Nothing? Yes, darling. Yes.
I didn't hear the last point. We need to have after Vajra Bell, we need to have a...
Inner offering?
Oh.
Someone will explain all these things. Are there any questions? Yes, sweetheart.
Last night, Refuge talked about the negative imprint. Are there any...
Go on. Huh?
Last night, Rinpoche talked about the negative imprints of the self-cherishing I, or the negative imprints of a not pure view or something like that. I'm not sure. But I was wondering if one is... I get that heavily regretting is good for our mental continuum so that we don't do something in the future. But does that have a negative imprint on others?
Well, we just need a really basic understanding of karma to answer that question. Just really basic, the way I understand it, okay? The Buddha's idea is, this is Buddha's observation. He didn't make this up. He's not a boss. He's not a creator. He didn't invent this. There's no equivalent in Buddhism of God's law, like we think of God's law, you know. So the natural law of the universe, as far as Buddha's concerned, it's his observation, is that every millisecond of what any sentient being thinks and does and says, every millisecond, without exception, kind of programs the mind, or they would say sows seeds in the mind. Similar to the action. There's details about it, but as I mentioned before, the key factor that determines whether the seed you grow in your mind, put into your mind is a so-called negative or positive one, is determined mainly by the energy that impels it, anger or attachment or love or kindness. Do you understand? So any action we do that's labelled as negative, that sows a seed in the mind, that will eventually ripen in the future, this is just the natural law of karma, as my suffering, and it ripens in any of four ways. 1, a type of rebirth. 2, a tendency to keep doing it. 3, an experience like it happening to us. And 4, even an environmental result. There's 4 kind of ways that our past actions ripen in the present, and 4 ways that our present actions ripen in the future. This is a natural law. So whatever you do in your mind, you'll get the results. If you practice the piano every day, who ends up being good at piano? You only, isn't it? Not me. Do you understand? Do you accept that? It's pretty logical, isn't it? Did you hear my point?
Yeah.
Just here, first of all, yes. So karma is whatever you do in your mind, driven by your body and speech, that programs your mind. So if you learn to play piano, you're basically programming yourself to become a good musician. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So that's what good Buddha means with karma. And his expertise is not piano playing, but is morality, how to stop being ridiculous and how to be virtuous. So It won't affect me directly, but because you know now how to help people, you can help me as a result of that, can't you? But it can't, your playing piano can't make me a better piano player, but you can help me play piano. Right. Well, the same with everything we think and do and say. It programs our mind. It's very personal. But because everything's interdependent, we impact upon each other, don't we?
Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes. That's
so
what
regret is the
about.
first, this is the purification practice. As Lama Yeshe says, there's no karma we can't purify. Everything's impermanent. So the practice of the end of the day that Rinpoche says we're insane not to do is again, this psychological process. First, it's a good way to remember them as the 4 R's. Okay, there's a different order, but I like this way. The first is you acknowledge, I did dumb things. I killed, I lied, I stole, I badmouthed my boyfriend, whatever, at the end of the day, and you regret it. But as His Holiness says, when he answered, a person asked him the difference between regret and guilt, and this is massive for us, okay? Because we have this dualistic view of I'm a bad person, which is the function of our ego grasping, don't blame your Catholic mother and your Jewish mother for this. It's just inbuilt in our mind because of ego grasping. Then the first thing we do is I did this, I did that. As His Holiness says, guilt is you look in the past and you say, I did this and I did that and I did this, and then you conclude, and I'm a bad person, right? We do that, don't we? So regret is a much more intelligent, wholesome attitude. And the Lamas always use the analogy of having taken poison. So when we understand the basic principle of karma, that everything I think and do and say sows seeds in my mind that will ripen as my happiness and my suffering, we really will want to pay attention, won't we? We only want the good stuff and don't want the bad stuff. So when we recognise we did dumb things and sowed negative seeds in our mind, the attitude of regret, the first part's the same, as His Holiness says. I did do this and I did do that and I did do this, but the second part, and we have to really practice thinking this. We have to say, what can I do to fix it? That's wholesome, that's intelligent. So naturally, if you've eaten poison, the first thing you say is, oh my God, what an idiot, I can't believe it. What can I do to fix it? You don't go, oh, I ate poison, I'm a bad person. And you're getting sicker and sicker every day. I mean, that's really very absurd, right? But that's our tendency. We kind of sink into this kind of, very unhappy self-hate. Because look at anger. You did this and you did that and you did this and you're a bad person. So guilt is just self-hate. And it's a tendency, it's just a habit we have. So regret is an intelligent one, and it's kind of like it's grown up. We're taking responsibility. We're acknowledging, you know what, I did do this and I did do that. But I don't want suffering. And you're talking to yourself here, not Buddha. You can have Buddha in there as well. You're doing this for yourself. I'm sick of suffering, Robina. What can I do? Second step, rely on the Buddha. Thank goodness I've got a decent doctor. You rely upon the Buddha, whose methods we will then practice, because we do the fixing. Buddha doesn't do the fixing, we do it. But you rely upon the Buddha. Do you understand? So the second part is then you're happy to have the Buddha and his method. So we do it in a formal way, and I'm sure here you'll be led in a meditation where we visualise the Buddha above our head, etc., etc. But the second part of this second step, reliance, is where we now have compassion for those we've harmed. The first one, we have to spell it out. I regret. Why? Not just I regret from the depths of my heart. I regret those actions because I don't want further suffering. Then you have compassion, because nobody wants suffering, and I'm now going to regret, if you like, for the sake of others as well. And the third step, you do a practice, or the antidote, as they say, and that you'll do the practice here. And the fourth one, as Babonka Rinpoche says, is the most important. You make a decision to not do it again. Do you understand? That's the learning from it. And there's no karma we can't purify. So this is a very uplifting practice. And again, as Rinpoche says, we are insane not to do it every day. Then we clean up our act. And then living in vows as well, then you've got all these amazing tools. You understand?
So I'd like to just share something, if I can, just one word. I got from some nuns that was with Venerable Sarah once at Vajrapani. They were doing a meditation with us, helping us correct our positions of our body. And it came to me that when I had these negative blaming things, the self-I coming up, I came up with a new word, and it was just called learning.
That's it. Well done. That's the point.
And that's what I do with my grandchildren now. There you go. They will color on the walls, and I go, nope, learning. And we have a joke about it.
Well done.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Where are you?
Yes. Hello. I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a very practical question concerning...
Just a very practical. If this is not practical, I'm going to burst into tears because the whole thing has been practical. If it's not practical, don't do it, darling. So another practical question. Good.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, sweetheart. Just pointing out.
So concerning stock.
What, darling?
Stock.
No, I can't ask you about that. You'll learn about it all later.
Can I ask? Okay.
I don't have the skills to answer those things. Venerable Chantal's going to get you information on all of these things, so you walk away completely satisfied. Yes. Next question.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So for a lot of beginners, so what is the consequence? We're talking about all the vows, 3-level vows. So what are the consequences of not making them?
Not taking them?
Not keeping.
Well,
what are the
well, you harm yourself, don't you? Obviously.
That, I mean, yeah. So
Pardon?
that's
What?
it. Just harm
Well, what else?
yourself.
Karma is you do it to yourself, babe. You harm yourself. If you've made a commitment to do something, I mean, if you make a commitment to do something, a strong commitment to yourself to go on a diet, a really strong commitment, and then you break it, you harm yourself. And then do you not?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously.
That's it.
Yes.
So you got to learn about karma.
No,
But the thing about one of the biggest misconceptions, you didn't say it, but it reminded me, thank you, Maida, about vows. One of the commonest things people say is, oh, no, I won't take a vow because I might break it. Well, that's like saying, oh, I won't drive a car because I might crash. I won't drive a car because I might put the foot on the brake instead of the accelerator. I won't drive a car because, whatever. I mean, you've got to know the advantages of something, and then you'll have the courage and the grown-upness to take the risk, but by learning the rules, because you see the advantage. If you don't see an advantage in having vows, that you're creating virtue 24 hours a day, that you're putting atomic bombs under your delusions, that you're getting ahead of the game, that you're moulding yourself into this marvellous person, then you won't want, why would you want to take a vow? I agree. So you should be so happy to take a vow and learn to keep them because you're the beneficiary. Not because, oh, I'm sure Lama Zopa knows I'm doing a good job, he'll give me a perfect human rebirth. It doesn't work like that. We are the boss, not Buddha, So when we know that, we'll be so excited to keep them. And the second you break them, the second you fall, you break your leg, when you don't just regret it or forget about it, you fix it immediately. But you won't. Many people say, one Lama said, well, if you only break your leg so many times, when you think, oh, I'll break it, I can fix it again. At some point, you can't fix it, So there'll be a sense of urgency and a wish to keep them, and a self-respectfulness to want to keep them because you're the beneficiary. When we understand what they are actually, not just some repression from some person up there who's going to punish us if we're naughty, Okay. Anybody else? Hang on, over there. Where are you? I can't see any hand. I thought it was a hand. Here. Yes, darling. It's time for lunch nearly, isn't it? No, 20 to 12. Yes.
She's asking how it works when one breaks the vows.
Can't hear so well, sweetie.
She's asking about the effect it has to break vows, the effect it has on the guru. How does that function?
It's all too esoteric for me. I mean, okay, I think a practical answer is if you're my doctor, and I rely upon you, and you give me all this advice and all this medicine, but I never take it and keep forgetting to follow up, eventually you won't give up on me, but you'll pay attention to the patients who need your help and who will do your wishes. So it's like that, I think. We in other words, these words they say, we've got to understand we create obstacles. Of course we do. If I don't take your advice and all the other patients get in first, I won't ever get an appointment with you because, the other people take you seriously. I think it's like that with it. We block ourselves from hearing the instructions. Well, that'll follow. You think about that. If they're not needed, they won't come back. If we don't need their advice, they're not going to be bothered getting born in front of us, shouting and yelling, So that's including their health and all that stuff. Yes, it would make sense. I think it's important to try and hear this stuff practically. We hear it, I have a psychologist friend who's in this room, and I'm not trying to be embarrassing to him, but we talk about Buddhism here as like this holy, special, precious, then over here is real life and psychology. I mean, it is precious, but it's precious psychology. If there's a single word in Buddhism that isn't practical and can't be explained, then it doesn't exist, okay? Buddha says by definition, that which exists is that which can be cognized by mind. It's axiomatic that that which exists can be cognized by mind. So it's so important to get past, just to put into our words and to hear it practically, the meaning of these things. I find that very helpful for my own mind. Someone else. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Someone else? Yes, I'm here.
Please give the definition of Sangye.
I can't see you, darling. Put your hand up. Oh, there you go. Okay, speak.
Please give the definition of Sangye again.
It's not, I think it's the etymology, it's kind of the meaning that's implied by it. Sang implies the utter eradication from one's own mind of all neuroses, all delusions, all misconceptions, all negative states of mind, all non-virtuous states of mind, all misconceptions, all afflictions, as Buddha calls them. And what kind of afflictions? Mental afflictions. What's a more modern 21st century term for mental affliction? Mental illness. All the mental illnesses, Buddha says, he has found from his own experience, this is the unique point about the Buddha, he's mind-boggling, that these are not at the core of our being. The Hindus went so far, they were pretty ingenious, but Buddha went further, you know, he'd suggest. They removed so much, but they still retained the last bit of an intrinsic I, as Geshe Graham told us. So the Buddha has found that the mind, they don't belong in their mind. They're like extra bells and whistles. We don't need them. They're the source of all suffering. So Sang implies the eradication utterly of all of them. Gye implies the development to perfection of all the other stuff, which is at the core of our being, speaking simply. Wisdom, clarity, love. Why? Because they're logical cognition, they're logical, valid cognitions. The others are just a bunch of idiots that aren't there's no basis for the other ones. They're mental illnesses. So Sang implies ridding the mind of all the rubbish. Gye implies developing to perfection all the other stuff. That's the job, and that implies, that's the result, and that obviously implies the method, doesn't it? They say you don't become a Buddhist until you start doing that. Junior school grade 1, entry level, being a good person, good communists behave nicely, good Muslims, that's common to the world. But the Buddha's one is unique, and that's when you get to the second scope and start to get to the root of the problem, when you get to the wisdom wing. So to rid the mind utterly of all neuroses and to develop to perfection. Buddha, Sangye. Okay? Someone else?
Excuse me. We see you again. Venerable, Robina. Nice to see you. 我想问一个问题哈，两个问题。Please, translate.
Keep it short and clear, please. Short and to the point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
刚才罗宾娜法师提到那个，就是在上师会供当中。
Can you speak English to me? She can do the Chinese. Oh, okay. Come on.
就是 one question 啊 ，quickly 啊。
法师，你讲中文吧。
是这样，就是在。Very thank you 哈。那个第一个问题就是说，罗宾娜法师刚才说那个在上师会供当中，就是说月半哈，初始25要做2次会供。那么这2次会供是属于戒律吗？还是属于一个誓言
？What's the question?
The first question is regarding
誓言和戒律有什么区别
？What?
The first question is that
是如果没有做，那是不是破戒？首先第一个问题就是说，这2次会供是不是属于戒律部分，还是属于誓言部分？这是一个。第二个就是如果没有做这2次会供，哈，那属于不属于破戒，还是破犯誓言？属于密乘戒吗
？What's the question?
Okay.
Yes.
So first question is, the 2 times a month of the Tao. Is
I can't
that
answer anything like that. Venerable Chantal will give you all the instructions.
这些细节上面，请问
It's not my
想
job.
到
I was
法
giving
师
you outline.
好，OK，I
That's it.
understand.
Sorry. No
Sorry.
content. It's not my job.
Yeah, yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
OK.
Thank
他
you
这
so
些
much.
，Thank you,
细
thank
上
you.
面，
Any
请问
other
想到法
questions
师。
before we go to lunch?
No, that's it.
Or before we line up for lunch? Yes? Just simple things. Junior school questions. Great. Junior school, high school. Go on.
Letztes Jahr habe ich an einem See gesehen, dass Kinder eben sehr ausgezogen waren und dann kamen, als es kälter wurde, die Mücken schwarmweise heraus und haben die Kinder gestochen und die Eltern sagten, rennt weg, rennt weg, rennt weg.
Okay.
Und dann haben die 2-jährigen Kinder versucht, vor den Mücken wegzurennen.
Okay. Burgle. Burgle.
Mosquitoes.
Meine,
German. Okay. Hier. Deutsch hier.
meine Frage ist, diese Phänomene nehmen ja zu. Was machen wir dann mit dem Töten der Mücken? Also es waren Schwärme, die haben richtig in der Gruppe angegriffen. Die Kinder hatten überhaupt keine Chance und hatten dicke Quaddeln auf den Körpern und konnten sich überhaupt nicht wehren. Was machen wir mit solchen Situationen?
Thank you very much. No, I mean it. Thank you. Thank you. What is it?
Last year I saw a group of children, small children, playing near a pool. And
Near
a pool, near a sea, near the sea.
Yes.
And they were naked, and
Yes.
many mosquitoes came, and
Yes.
they were biting the children.
Yes.
And the parents, they were telling them to run away.
That's right.
And there were so many mosquitoes. And just now my question is what
Yes.
we should do about it.
I understand. I understand.
To save the children from this
Well,
suffering.
okay, I understand. Yeah. When we have the first level of understanding Buddha's teachings, which is karma, which is that every millisecond of what I think and do and say will sow seeds in my mind that will ripen in the future in my mind as my happiness and my suffering. First point. Second, then when I realize the motivation for what I do determines whether it's negative and positive. So if I really have that clear in my mind first, if I really have that clear, then I wouldn't want to harm the mosquitoes immediately. That wouldn't be my wish. I would want to save the children, but I'd also not want to harm the mosquitoes. Forget for compassion for them, but for my sake. So then that will inform a bunch of new decisions. You will find a way to help the children by trying not to harm the mosquitoes. That's possible, but we have to start with the first thought, and that's not natural for us. It's not that easy. Life is full of dilemmas like this, but it's the starting point is to get really clear this basic principle of the fundamentals of the virtue and morality for the Buddha. Everything we think and do and say produces future results in us. In other words, I'm sorry, you got it clear? Say that. Sorry. For the lady, yeah. That's a starting point. Has to be.
Hello?
So, wait, I haven't finished. You clear? Done? So the point is this, darling, listen, we hear this as religion, and then we hear practical over here. So if you go to your doctor, and she says, darling, you'd better not smoke, because I know that it will help, you might get cancer in the future. So then, you don't go home, you don't go home and think, oh no, you don't think, well, is there something I can do, please, to smoke a cigarette and not get cancer? No, it's a natural law. Karma's the same. So as much as we can, we try to have the wish not to harm sentient beings, first because I don't want to harm myself. And then that will shift the view we have and make us a bit more clear and do our best. Do you understand? for our sake and the sake of the mosquitoes and the children, if we can. Do you understand? Clear? Klar? Thank you. I think a couple more, then time for lunch. Last one more question. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Hello. I was confused a little bit about your...
Put your hand up. Can't see you. I can't see your hand.
All right.
Oh, there you go. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I was confused about your statement about how Buddha acts like a doctor whose advice is not listened to.
What, darling? Sorry, what? Just say the question. Speak it as a question. It really helps for you.
It's not actually a question. I think that, for example, even in the aspiration prayer of Maitreya, they say the Buddhas are never scornful of the sentient beings who have tainted minds, and they will never abandon them. But
so what do you want me to say then?
But with compassion will guide them on the path. So
what's the point of your point?
It was related to the breaking of the vows of the person before when you gave the example.
Yeah, so then say the question that's implied by that. Try and find a question implied by your statement. It will help you.
Is Buddha as uncompassionate as to abandon a person who's not listening to the vows?
Who said Buddha's uncompassionate?
The example of a person who's not taking the medicine made me have this analogy.
But why would you assume that, from what I said, that Buddha doesn't have compassion? He's only got compassion. There's no other choice.
That was actually, then I understood right, I guess. So even if one breaks the vows, maybe Buddha will not abandon you, like a doctor will not abandon... Maybe what,
darling? Maybe what?
Like a doctor will not abandon a person who's not taking the medicine.
Buddha would never abandon. It's not possible. But if we never listen, we create an obstacle between us and the Buddha. He's not doing anything wrong. We are creating the obstacle. We are creating the obstacle. So Buddha's there frantically trying to help us, but we're as thick as a post and can't hear it. Nothing to do with Buddha. It's all to do with us.
Thank you.
Can you hear that? Does that make sense to you? Darling, I need to know if that made sense to you. Otherwise, I have to say more. I don't want to leave you unhappy. Did that make sense?
I think you meant probably the same thing.
I beg your pardon?
Now it makes more sense, yeah.
I'm very happy. I think she just felt forced to say that. Okay, thank you. That's everything. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.